goodness. Oh, wow! In your life, have you seen anything like that?
Got a team, and welcome back to a very special one-off edition for now of the Cutline TAB's golfing podcast. My name is Karl Paul, joined in studio ahead of the Ryder Cup this week with my good mate Paul Mawate. Paul, how's it going, mate?
Yeah, very good. Looking forward to the Ryder Cup this weekend. There'll be plenty of airtime, I guess. So I won't be doing much else this weekend.
No better golfing event to bet on, in my opinion.
And there's a few markets out there at the moment. I'm sure there'll be a few more once the foursomes and four balls get named.
Yep. We'll get to them shortly. Before we get started, I want to welcome in our guest. He is a winner on the PGA Tour. He won the Australian PGA Championship, a member of the 1992 Eisenhower Trophy winning team, and he is the 1993 New Zealand Sportsman of the Year. It is Phil Tataurangi. Phil, how are you, mate? Welcome back to the Cutline.
Guys, I can barely remember those sorts of things. They were that long ago, but nice to be back on with you. Yeah, absolutely. The Ryder Cup is a really special event. It's quite captivating, I think, for non-golf watchers. And yeah, I guess that little twist with it being match play, I think you're right. You know, people like punting on who's first past the post, whereas traditionally over 4 days of stroke play, the tournament kind of takes a whole heap of different weaves and dives, and you're never too sure which way it's going to go. But I think with head-to-head match play over the course of 18 holes, and then over the course of 3 days with two teams that have had history, it's a really special event to take a little punt on.
It is, and we're going to try and give the punters sort of the best leg up, I suppose, heading into the weekend. Give them some insight.
We'll give it a go.
And we're going to start off with some history, and we'll look at, I guess, before you can go forward, you've got to look back, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Have a look back at the sort of some recent results in the Ryder Cup. It's an event that happens every couple of years, of course. USA are the defending champions, but have you got some history there for us in terms of how results have played out in the last, I don't know, let's say recent history?
Well, in recent history, the tournaments have been fairly one-sided, and that was highlighted by the last tournament back in 2021, where the USA won by, I think it was 9 points in the end, 10 points in the end at Whistling Straits. The tournament before that was in Europe, in France, and the Europeans did a number on the Americans. So in recent years, the tournaments have been fairly one-sided, but prior to that, they were very, very close with, I think it was from about 2008, 2006 back to 1990 odd, where no tournament was decided by more than 3 points.
So when you say close, you're talking final score on the day?
Correct.
In terms of results, though, Phil, Europe have won 7 of the last 10 Ryder Cups. Something pretty impressive in an event like this.
You did right about that. And when you kind of add into this particular event that the Yanks haven't won on European soil for a quarter of a decade, and you kind of go back to 1993 and you know, Tom Watson being the captain at that particular time. You had names like Floyd and Stewart, and you know, get names from a totally different generation. Was the last time the Americans have gone on a plane to pick up the Ryder Cup. So you know, you add that into the mix. You add that the Europeans are really good on their home soil. You add in the golf course, which is an unknown, I guess, factor for the US side, and you go, or I guess you add in that most times going to the Ryder Cup, the US team is favoured on world ranking points and potentially even on the seasons and the form that they've had as individuals. But somehow when you pull them all together, the European side boxes above their weight, and they throw in a couple of haymakers that probably the Yanks don't see coming.
I had a look at the last two tournaments in Europe, and the US are 2-12-2 in foursomes in the last two Ryder Cups in Europe. So out of a possible 16 points in those foursomes matches in those last two Ryder Cups in Europe, they've won 3 points. 3 points out of a possible 16. So they really have struggled in the foursomes in Europe. Look, I just had a look. 7 of the last 9 Ryder Cups have been decided by 5 or more points. The last 2 tournaments by an average of 8.5. But prior to that, all 8 tournaments from 87 to 2002 were decided by 3 or less points, including the second ever tie in 1989.
Probably should say too, the USA are favourites again. $1.65 to retain the cup. $2.10 Europe. When we talk about the dominance or the history and the dominance of Europe in the last little while, and Phil, as you said, it's been 25, 30 years since USA have gone on to win on European soil. I'll tell you what, that $2.10 already, 2 minutes into the show, is looking very juicy for me.
Yeah, it really is. I think this European team has also either got stacked loads of experience, or it's got a rookie that's going to be playing this for the very first time in front of his home crowd. And so, I think you add in those factors and that unknown factor about the European side, which is tends to be the storyline when you come in, although there's stalwarts and there's some of those names that won't be there this year that have been part of this thing for the last 10 or 15 years. I think the unknown factor of the European side always tends to catch the Americans by surprise. They've been guilty, I think, at times of overcomplicating things. The Americans, great playing as individuals. When they come to a team format, there's more data and there's more analysis and there's more strategy going into the team room. And meanwhile, the Europeans are sitting over the other side having a couple of Guinnesses. And there's two totally different strategies that come into it. I think you add in that the PGA Tour has long been a tour for individuals, where the Europeans, they basically use 2 years of riding on the same either planes, buses, trains, whatever it is, has been the way that they've built camaraderie over the course of 2 years, so that when the Ryder Cup comes around, it's just another week. Where the Americans have had trouble with the gelling. I think, Paul, you bring up a really good point when it comes to foursomes. It's not a format that the Americans get to play a lot. Yes, of course, they've got the Ryder Cup as the President's Cup, these days, but they don't get to play that very often. Whereas a lot of clubs in Europe, they have foursomes as a club competition, so they grow up as kids playing that, and it's way more of an adopted format of play. You add in the factor of the golf course, which they tend to, the captains have a huge say in how the course is set up, or how they would like it set up pre the tournament. They don't get to dictate that during the tournament, but pre the tournament, and so a lot of analysis has gone into what the possible pairings might well be in foursomes prior to the week, and how they might suit the golf course. And so there's more data than even the boys at the TAB can found their way through when trying to figure out what the right combinations might be going into this thing. And then you basically just go in and fly by the seat of your pants.
We'll have a look at we'll put our prediction hat on later and try and predict some pairs. Before we do, ask you guys to have a quick think about the Ryder Cup over the last couple of years, and share maybe a memory or two, or something that's stood out for you in the last sort of few editions of the Ryder Cup. Phil, let's start with you. Is there what's stood out for you, or what's burned in the memory over the last little while for Ryder Cup?
couple of memories really. I think in the most recent past, and I say the most recent past, the last handful or so, the edition at Medina was something special, where there was a big comeback from the Europeans on the last day. Once again, a stacked US team. It was on home soil. They were up going into the last day, and in actual fact, they could have been up by 8 points going into the last round if it wasn't for the postman Ian Poulter coming through late on the Saturday afternoon to give them some sort of show on the final day, and so that was with Jose Maria Olazabal as the captain. It was a year or so after Sevi had passed away, and so there was all sorts of emotions over the entire event. So that one kind of sings out in most recent history, but we don't see much of the real mano a mano battle anymore with the number of players that play the same tour, with a number of the Europeans that even live in the US. And so the one that kind of comes back to me where I would love to see it return to this was the war on the shore at Kiowa in 91, where Azinger and Ballesteros were going at each other, accusing each other of cheating. There was the Gulf War was, it just concluded, and so there was a lot of this patriotism behind in the undercurrent of the matches, and so it became, and it felt a lot more like countries going to battle in a way, more than a sporting event. And so I think that one, I was still an amateur at the time, just about to embark on my professional career, so I didn't know any of the players personally, but after getting on the PGA Tour and getting to meet some of them and get to talk over a couple of glasses of wine about that event, and Captain Dave Stockton, I managed to spend a fair bit of time with him talking about that week. It was something quite special for a sporting event to take on those sorts of tones, and I'd love to see that sort of undercurrent, that sort of atmosphere come back into the Ryder Cup. Sadly, I think too many of the players are too good of friends nowadays to maybe see those sorts of things return.
Bring back the biff. That's what I heard. You make a very, very good point, though. Like, even for neutral fans, say Kiwis, you typically pick a team you like. You get around players that you like, or root against players you don't like. I struggle in this, particularly this year. Like, there are a lot of players that I like to follow and I like to keep tabs on. It's kind of only maybe one or two on one team that I don't really particularly care for. So
Patrick Reed didn't get selected, did he?
There's another Pat selected though.
So, yeah.
Anyway, your memory or your little nugget of gold.
Have a look at that. 1991, War on the Shore. 2012, the Miracle, Funky Cold Medina. However, I didn't mind the last tournament in Europe where we got the pairing of Mollywood with Francesco Molinari and Tommy Fleetwood, who played 5 matches each. Molinari went undefeated. And I think
4-1
for our good friend Tommy Fleetwood. I think it was just the singles that he dropped. They were a fantastic pairing. And the one thing about Ryder Cup is the crowd gets in behind. Obviously, when they're in the US, there's a huge crowd supporting the Americans. And then when they're in Europe, they go absolutely from the very first tee shot until the final putt on Sunday in the singles. So, yeah, I just love that. It's so parochial.
Well, I had Le Golf National here as well. So between us, we haven't done this very well. It is. Yeah, it is. I suppose a bit of recency bias, but there was a lot that happened at that in France. As you say, there was the Mollywood thing that just completely sort of took over the golfing world, and it seemed like the world at one point. It was Tiger's last Ryder Cup. Sergio became the Europeans' all-time leading points scorer. But the two that stood out for me are probably a little bit on the immature side, I suppose, and that says a lot about me. Brooks Koepka teed off the first hole. I can't remember what day it was. Hit driver. It was a drivable par 4. Water on the left and a bit of a bank on the right, sort of behind the green, I think. And he smoked a lady in the face on the full. I remember that. And Phil conceding to Molinari in his singles match to give up the Ryder Cup on the 16th or 17th after putting it in the soup. Just picked up and shook his hand. That was it. That was late, and that was Phil's last Ryder Cup too.
Was that a par 3? Was it?
Yeah, 16 right there, right by the hotel. And often you see with these teams matches, guys, is that they actually take the routing of the golf course, how it normally plays in tournament, and Golf National is the host of the French Open, and the Italian Open has been hosted at this golf course, Marco Simon, that's going to be the host venue this coming week. And they manipulate the routing of the golf course so that they can actually fix the final 3 or 4 holes, because of course match play doesn't always go to the last hole. They can fix it where the final arrangement of holes are to be right where the tented village is, right where the sponsor tents are, right where all of the action is going to be focused on, and where, again, all of the data suggests that most of the matches kind of get to the 15th or 16th hole at least. And if not over the closing couple of stretches, that's where the cup will be decided in the final day, but for the most part over the course of all of the matches throughout the course of the week, all of the conclusions will take place on those kind of holes. And so the usually the makeup of those holes too has either a par 4, a par 3, a par 5 in amongst those. So that's why they kind of try and figure it out. Again, we're talking about match play, and sometimes bogeys can win holes, right? It's not always about adding them up at the end of it. But what they're trying to entice as much as possible is that mix between super aggressive play and then keeping an eye on what your opponent does. And so, the same thing will be the case this week. They've got a drivable par 4 over water as the 16th hole, a par 3, 17th, and then a par 5, which is reachable with water in play as the final hole. And so I'm expecting similar sort of scenes to Le Golf National in Paris for the conclusion of a number of matches. And as you say, Karl, that maybe the clinching point may be decided with the ball going in the water, which could happen over the last 3 holes here in Italy.
There's one other moment that just pops to mind now. I can't remember what tournament. It was in the States, and I think Justin Leonard was playing Jose Maria Olazabal. They're on the 16th or 17th, and they both had lengthy putts, and Leonard sunk his. And then the Wags and everyone just ran onto the green and started yahooing. And then they had to wait for it to clear. And then Jose had to take his putt after there'd been all this jumping up and down in front of him. And I think there was a bit of bad blood about that one. Anyone ever walked on your line before you've taken a putt, Phil?
Yeah, look, it happens from time to time, but it's more by accident. And I think in that particular instance, that was 99 at the Country Club, where the US Open was last year, is where all those scenes were. And you're right, pretty poor sportsmanship by the US team to have the moment overcome them. You can totally understand that if it was signed, sealed, delivered, done. But with actually not only Jose Maria still to putt, but the deciding match still to be played as well, there's still golf on going on the course. It did just seem like it was, a moment where if all of those players could take it back, I'm pretty sure if you gave them a chance to say, could we have celebrated in another way? I think there's enough dust that's settled and egos that have been kind of calmed that they would have liked to have taken that back. But hey, look, these sorts of moments, and this is what match play does. This is what this event brings. It brings out a totally different. Guys are fist pumping from Friday morning, where you don't see them fist pump in the space of 30 weeks that they play in tournament golf all year. And next minute, there's they turn into just animals. And so, managing that must be something else for all the assistant captains and all the players as they're going throughout the course of the week, because everything, it seems like every single shot, quite literally, there's something on it, and that's what makes it such a great TV spectacle.
Right, we'll move on. You touched on the format before, Paul. You mentioned Europe's domination in the foursomes. Is it the format day one, 4-ball foursomes, and then that's the same on day two, 4-ball foursomes, morning, afternoon, with singles on day three? We've got 4 matches in morning and afternoon for the first 2 days. Is it a surprise to anyone? I'll start with you, Phil, that Europe aren't starting with foursomes to get, with that dominance that they've had, to get a hot start?
Yeah, it is an interesting one. And I must admit, as a fan, without a horse in the race, having the foursomes in the morning and the 4-balls in the afternoon each day, when, let's face it, the whole thing revolves around a TV audience, you would think that the 4-balls in the afternoon would garner a little bit more excitement, and certainly, the 4-ball competition tends to bring out more aggressive play than the foursomes. But they've gone with this format, and it's been a consistent one the last few years. And it is a head scratcher, as you say, that given their form in recent matches and on home soil, but there must be something in it that Beaver, Luke Donald. I'm never going to leave that one down, am I? Beaver, he's floating around over there somewhere, isn't he?
I hear he's going to be on course.
Yeah, there you go. That Luke Donald's seen something, and look, this has been a lot of the talk prior to, is that in Cups past, there have been a couple of studs on both teams that have gone all 5 matches. At least he's pretty warm at the moment, mid to high 20s, and which is not warm for professional golfers. They follow the sun for the most part, but then you're taking a pretty hilly golf course. There may not be players that go all 5 matches, and so they're going to be interesting to see from a stamina standpoint whether all of the energy that goes into the 4-balls in the morning, as you say, how many of those players back up and play in the foursomes in the afternoon for both teams. It'd be going to be interesting to see.
What's your favourite format, Paul?
Well, I've never really played foursomes, so but for watching, I love the foursomes. The picking of the pairs is so important in the foursomes. Obviously important in the 4-ball as well, but in the foursomes, I think it's super important. And you've got to get, I guess, a couple of players that complement each other really, really nicely. And I think the Europeans, and it's probably because, as Phil said, they grow up playing this way as well, so they're a wee bit more used to it than the Americans. But they just seem to pick pairs that really, really do gel well together. So, yeah, I'd like to play foursomes. I don't think I'd find a partner that will want to play foursomes with me, but I know.
It is a fun format. It's very fun if you're playing well. If you're playing bad, it's tough. What's your
really
favorite?
is. Really is. I enjoy playing foursomes as well, just because of just how difficult it is. There's the famous pairing that Hal Sutton put out there a few years ago of putting Tiger and Phil together in an opening foursomes. You can totally see it in four ball where they both basically play their own ball, and they're both aggressive players, so you would expect them to make a whole heap of birdies, blah blah blah. But in foursomes, two of the most erratic drivers of the ball playing together. So neither one, and it wasn't at a time actually when they were particularly fond of each other either. And so, the head-scratching moments of the Ryder Cup, that one has to go down in there somewhere, that those two paired together where, not that Tiger did a lot of pleading, but Steve Williams was in Bones's ear trying somewhat to get Phil just to put something into play. And that also, in those matches, that was when Mickelson was testing a new Callaway driver at the time, and it was like an aerosol can, and so Tiger was, hitting from all sorts of parts of Oakland Hills that he certainly hadn't practiced from over the first couple of days. And so it just becomes a really bloody hard format. And to your point, Paul, the actual pairing of personalities, you also take in, there's only one ball in play. So players use different golf balls. And so they've got to gel somewhat with the ball that they play with their playing partner. Some players like to lay up on par fives or play to a certain yardage. Other players don't, tend to be more aggressive. And so just trying to get all of those different dynamics lined up to ensure that the players you put together gel. You've got someone who puts the ball in play, you get someone who's aggressive, and somehow they can make that mix work together well over 18 holes.
What's the one skill, your best skill you'd bring to a four ball or a foursomes team, Phil?
Most probably snack food. Making sure you got the bag full of goodies. I don't know. I really don't. Maybe purely strategizing the golf course is the only thing that I'm thinking about. I think when you're looking for a foursomes partner, you're certainly looking for someone that's a straight driver of the ball. That's a lot of fairways and greens in regulation. You can lean on that per se, and these, you're talking about 24 of the best players in the world. So not they don't have too many weaknesses, but that mix again of having a look at the golf course and going, okay, these are the holes that you can be aggressive on. These are the holes that you really need something just in play, and figuring out those holes that are probably going to be decided by a putt more so than a shot, and trying to get people to play the right shots at the right time, which is all important too, of course, of who tees off on the odd holes and who tees off on the even holes, and trying to get the golf course to fit people's skill sets. But I don't know if I'd bring too much, to be fair.
I'll tell you what, to anyone listening, you're offering a hell of a lot more than Paul and I. Never mind the fact that you've won some professional tournaments too. What about you, Paul? What's your strength? What are you bringing?
I'd bring banter.
Yeah.
Psychologically, I would get under the skin of the opposition.
Yep.
I wouldn't talk directly to them, but I would make sure they could overhear exactly what I was saying to my partner, and I'd pump my partner up as well. So, just a few comments that they will overhear, and yeah, they will hate me by the end of it, but job done.
I've played golf, Paul, and he's not wrong. It's extremely random.
Hey, and don't for one moment think that actually isn't part of the Ryder Cup as well. That there's a fair bit of that has happened in the past. There's, whether it be the players or whether it be the assistant captains, or whether that, very much Montgomery was brilliant at it. absolutely brilliant at the banter. So was Azinger. Sevi, of course, was just a champ. And so it's a key thing, I think, that actually takes place throughout the course of the week. So maybe, Paul, you might find yourself, a hired gun in years ahead.
Someone like a Tyrrell Hatton who plays for Europe and
An angry man at the best of times.
Yeah, just cannot hold his own head like that. That would rattle me. That would rattle me big time. I think if I'm playing with my mates, I'm that guy. I lose my cool every now and then.
Yes, I know.
Rattle myself. Before we move on to have a quick look at the teams, if you could choose one person, one golfer, you can't choose Tiger, okay? Because although his Ryder Cup record's not great, but if you could choose one golfer to pair yourselves with in a foursomes match, who would it be? I'm going to go first. I said I'm going to need someone who can deal with the odd erratic miss, someone who's creative, can play out from behind a tree, but someone who's going to get me on the green as fast as possible. So I'm going to take Cam Smith. Only issue is if we're both not good with driver on the day, we could be in trouble.
Big time.
Very erratic.
Yes.
Phil, you.
Yeah, I must admit, I thought about this guy pre-Ryder Cup, and then I didn't even have a look too much at your run sheet, and I wasn't thinking about. I was kind of zeroed in on the Ryder Cup, and I was tossing up between Poulter and Sergio, in that both of Sergio's got the most points in Ryder Cup, I think. And Poulter's, he's probably the Paul Moati of the European team in a way. He's kind of that voice, that guy that brings the antics. The unpopular guy with the opposition. So, sorry, you just
unpopular.
Sorry.
We've got very similar fashion tastes as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 18-hole match play. There's no room. There's no space for nice guys. To be fair, you've kind of got to be an assassin. You got to get in there and do your job and get out. So probably it's Poulter. To be fair.
Paul.
Lydia Ko.
Oh yeah.
Well, I'd be horrible.
This year or last year?
Yeah. Now, see, I think I could actually help Lydia.
Please tell me how you can help Lydia.
Give me a call if I'm here. I can help. I think I could not just calm her down. I think I can make her laugh, and I think when she's happy, she plays really, really well. And you might say that's like a cycle. When you play really, really well, you're really, really happy. But I just don't know. I'm not sure what's going on, but I think mentally I could help her out. I'm a Gilbert Anoka. I've got no qualifications whatsoever, but I think I could help Lydia out, and I think we'd smash them, bro.
We need to make this happen.
It's a whole new podcast, this one here. Paul Moati accusing Lydia Ko in her first year of marriage of being unhappy, and I can fix it.
Not a marriage counsellor, golf counsellor. That's right.
Wow. Let's move on before we get in trouble. We're going to have a quick rundown of the teams, and then I've got a couple of questions about the teams to go through.
4 rookies on each side.
There is. Right, we'll start with Europe, and I'll start with the rookies. Ludwig Aberg, Nikolai Højgaard, Sepp Straka, and Robert McIntyre. Then you've got Matt Fitzpatrick, Tommy Fleetwood, Tyrrell Hatton, Victor Hovland, Shane Lowry, Rory McIlroy, John Rahm, and Justin Rose. On the US team, the rookies are Wyndham Clark, Brian Harmon, Max Homa, and Sam Burns. Then you've got Patrick Cantlay, Ricky Fowler, who's back, Brooks Koepka, Colin Morikawa, Xander Schauffele, Scotty Scheffler, Jordan Spieth, and Justin Thomas. Just hearing those names, the rookies, who do you sort of lean towards rookie-wise, Phil?
Yeah, look, I think maybe taking the American team to start off with, when you have a look at Clark and Harmon as Ryder Cup rookies, and they're guys that won two of the biggest events on the calendar this year, you go, well, maybe yes, in reality, yes, they don't have any Ryder Cup points beside their names, but they've proven themselves in a couple of the biggest tournaments on the schedule this year. So you'd probably throw in that, the likes of Homer and Burns have been kind of knocking on this sort of team for the last couple of seasons. They've got President's Cup experience as well. The Europeans, however, when you take a look at Bobby Mack and Aberg, who was sitting finals at college here not too long ago, Højgaard, who's got a twin brother that, if it wasn't for him going down and him getting a chance to impress at the Hero Cup earlier this year, and Seb Striker, who's been a consistent ball striker, but maybe that showing at the Open a couple of months ago, finishing second to Harmon there, was probably the shining light that got him the nod. It feels like the rookies on the US team are stronger. But there's, most of these matches are team matches, and you would expect that if they're going to go out, they're going to be with some experienced old heads on the European side. So maybe there's not so much of a void. It will be interesting to see how many of those rookies, 8 of them in total, how many of them play the first 4 sessions of this Ryder Cup.
Phil makes a good point there, Paul. You look at the US rookies. Max Homer, he went 4-0 in President's Cup last year. Sam Burns won the WGC match play this year.
Brian Harmon
and Wyndham Clark, major champions. But I'll say on the European team, 2 of their rookies, Nikolai Højgaard and Bobby Mack, have won at Marco Simone. Højgaard also top 5 there this year, I think. Sepp Straka also a winner this year. And who's the other one?
Aberg.
Yeah.
Aberg, just the next big thing in golf. Yeah. It's a hard one for me to side. Where do you side with?
In terms of the rookies?
Yeah.
I think you have to side with the Americans, just with the fact that they come in although they're inexperienced, this is their first Ryder Cup, they got a whole chunk of experience on the PGA Tour, and a wee bit of President's Cup experience as well, which is probably something that we haven't really factored in years gone by, because it's still relatively fresh. But that's going to help the Americans again in terms of the formats that the 4 balls and the foursomes that they play under in these team tournaments. So, yeah, the advantage in terms of the rookies for mine is definitely with the Americans.
They're rookies in the sense too. The European rookies in the sense too. They feel like they are proper rookies. They're quite young, sort of new-ish on the golfing scene, whereas the American guys of Harmon could be 50, and the other guys are, multiple time winners between them. They feel like they've been around for a while, and you said before, it's surprising that they're sort of only getting their shot now on these Ryder Cup teams, Phil.
Yeah, and I think that's, there's a couple of cup factors at play here. There's a few guys that were deemed ineligible for selection, even though they were available in parentheses because of their playing on the Live Tour. But guys like Dustin Johnson and Patrick Reed have kind of been stalwarts there. So that, there hasn't been that many spots available for new guys to play their way in. And in natural fact, for the most part, if you're a new guy, you most probably have to select yourself. You can't rely on a captain's pick per se. And so, but this year there's a couple more spots on the bus, I guess. And but to Paul's original point, the recent times, not a lot was different. The American team had impressive performances in major championships and the world rankings and form. It was a whitewash there in Paris, and Tiger had just come off winning the Tour Championship the week before. And you'd think if there was anything to buoy the team room, the big cat, the big voice, being in form, you would think would do it. But they come back to 18-hole match play, on a golf course that might not necessarily suit the eye and suit the skill sets of the Americans. You've got a slightly different mix of skill sets though, with Harman being on the shorter side, quite literally the short side. He's maybe 5'8", but the shorter side off the tee. So there's a different skills matrix that goes into to that US team than maybe that's been there in the years past.
Before we move on from the rookies, quick look at the top rookie point score from each team. Ludwig for the Europeans is the favourite at $2.15. Nikolai Højgaard $4.20, Sepp Straka $4.20, and Robert McIntyre $5. On the US, Max Homa $2.50 favourite, Sam Burns $3.40, Wyndham Clark $3.60, and the old man Brian Harman $6.50. Paul, on the spot, who are you taking from each team?
Look, at the price, I think I've got to take Bobby Mack at, was he for around $5?
Really?
Well, didn't you just say
do you see him playing enough games?
Well, that's the big thing. Because of conditions, I think some of the older boys might not play as much. So I think the younger boys might have to pick up a wee bit more of that slack, when normally you'd probably the more experienced boys will probably play the bulk of the game. So I think he'll play at least 3 of the sessions, I think, the first 4 sessions, and then the singles, of course. So, and he has winning form on the course. It's just the price that attracts me there, the $5.
Okay. Bill, any sort of who jumps off the page in the rookies?
Yeah, good point with the price there, Paul. Enticing, and McIntyre comes across like a player if he gets stuck under the wing of a John Rahm or a Rory McIlroy, and we'll talk about pairings, I guess, here soon, or possibly even a Tyrrell Hatton. Maybe is it
Bollywood?
Is the new pairing Bobbywood? An old head may well get him to play beyond where his station is at the moment. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I think he's by far and away the player I think that's least likely to play the most matches for the European side. And so it's been a few years since we've seen a captain tuck a player away and say, hey, we're not going to play it to Sunday. So I think, he's going to play something in the first couple of days. But look, I think, and it's easy to go with Wyndham Clark, with it being an excitement machine, and he's a star that's been born this year in LA Country Club, but is star of the game kind of in the waiting. I get the sense that he could become, he has the skills, he has the game that is built to be a 10-time winner on tour, and so he may well be someone that just pops out and says, hey, look, I'm not only just a one-trick pony, I may actually be a bit more than that. And so he's someone I'm quite interested in this time around to see whether the moment is a bit too much for him, or whether he takes that next step and steps into becoming an American champion.
I struggle to separate the top 3 guys in the US team. I think it's very close. In the European side, even at $2.15, I can't look past Ludwig. He's going to play 4, maybe 5. He hits the ball a mile and it doesn't move from center at all. So he's going to play. He's going to be an asset for foursomes. If they, like you say, they put him under the wing of a Rory or a Rahm or even Victor Hovland, that's a scary pairing. I think he's going to get a lot of points. The other one is Sepp Straka too, and 4-ball is a guy that can go out and sort of scoop up birdies for fun. So he could play aggressive, could have 3 triples in there, but doesn't matter when you got a guy next to you who's got a par or birdie. So
the sleeper in all of this, Karl, I don't want to jump here. The sleeper in all of this is Sam Burns, in that he's best mates with Scotty Scheffler, right? And Scheffler's the best ball striker in the game right now. So it's fair to say that those two are going to play a couple of times together in the team play. There's no guessing there. That's not going to catch anyone by surprise. And so he might well be, the happy passenger that just sits alongside and does his thing because he knows he can count on his best mate to be, either in play or somewhere between 15 and 20 feet from the hole every single hole.
Wish I could count on my best mate to do that. No, good segue. Good segue. Let's have a look at the pairings, or let's play a bit of a guessing game. Who are your locks to be paired together, Phil, for both teams? Yeah,
outside of Burns and Scheffler, I think as I say, I think they're locked away. Cantlay and Schauffele, they're equally on each other's Christmas card list at the top. Take your pick, and 3 guys be playing a foursomes outfit with Ricky, Jordan, and JT all being good mates. I sense that Homer and Ricky may well play together, both being California guys, and I wouldn't be at all surprised to see those 2 play together. I think the likes of Victor Hovland, his game is suitable for everybody, but I wouldn't be at all surprised to see him and someone like Fitzpatrick play there together. Be really formidable. And look, we're probably bouncing around here. It's trying to find, the rookies, how they're going to get into the match. They're going to be paired with a legend or an experienced player in McIlroy or Rahm somehow. But there's that other strategy where you might just front load and put all your top players to play together, and you might only just get the likes of Ludwig or Højgaard to only get a couple of matches in. I think someone like Justin Rose playing alongside of Fitzpatrick or Hatton is also a likelihood, because given that Rose is a stalwart, he's probably the old man in the team, and taking a Fitzpatrick alongside, where they've got very similar games, I could see them playing together in foursomes play at some stage or another as well.
Justin Rose, 7-2-1 in foursomes, so you can almost guarantee he will be out there.
Yeah.
I a bit like you, Phil. I think the US pairings almost pick themselves. It's not a secret. JT Spieth or JT Fowler, Xander Cantlay, Scheffler Burns. I think Homer and Morikawa.
2 Cali boys again.
Yeah, too true.
I know Wyndham Clark and Ricky Fowler are good mates. They've got the same putter.
Yep.
Not that matters. I struggle to see where Brooks and Brian Harmon fit into this, though.
Now there's an odd couple.
Yeah.
Can't imagine they're on each other's Christmas card list.
Yeah. No, look, it's a good point, and for all of what's happened in golf the last couple of years, I don't think there was any doubt that Koepka was going to be on this team, and that was after Augusta, let alone what he did at Oak Hill in the PGA. But he is the one where you go, how does for his game, who matches up well with him? And he's got a hell of a game, but it's an awkward pairing, and so that he'll be playing with somebody. I just can't at the moment throw a dart at a name that stands out.
European team, Paul, bit of a harder one to pick. Who have you got with who?
Yeah, I got the young fellow Ludwig with either McIlroy or Rahm. I think he needs to be with one of the big boys.
Yeah.
I think that'll just calm his nerves slightly, knowing that he's got an established sort of professional with him.
I did hear, he and Victor Hovland played best ball against Rory and Tommy Fleetwood, and they beat them convincingly. I can't remember what the score was, but they beat them convincingly.
Well, if you're going to have Kelly boys together, you might as well have the Scandos together as well. So that sort of makes sense. He's got to be with one of the more experienced players on tour. And although Victor Hovland hasn't been around as long as Rahm or McIlroy, boy, oh boy, is he playing at the top of his game at the moment. So it'd be an ideal sort of period. Any one of those three for the young fella, Ludwig. Yeah, I think Justin Rose would probably he'd match nicely with another one of the sort of inexperienced, the rookies. Either one of the rookies or with a Hatton or a Fitzpatrick. I just think, you get the English boys together, and I think they'll go well. So, yeah, obviously McIlroy's going to be playing a lot. Johnny Rahm's going to be playing a lot. Victor's going to be playing a lot. Victor yet to pick up a win in Ryder Cup. He's got a couple of halves and 3 losses, so he'll be looking to get a tick in that box.
The records of the two teams that aren't overly favourable for European teams, Phil. They've I think the last outing at Whistling Straits is probably a big cause in that, but it's Victor Hovland hasn't won. Matt Fitzpatrick went 0-5.
Didn't even get a point, half a point. Yeah.
Shane Lowry's all-time match play record, 9 wins, 20 losses. Right. Hatton sucks at singles. It's when you dig deep into the stats, it doesn't look great for Europe. So maybe you can understand why Team USA are so heavily favoured.
Plus, I can't remember the last time I watched a European team without either Poulter, Garcia, or Westwood. That's a whole lot of Ryder Cup experience gone there, and you can argue they were getting towards the end of their sort of shelf life. I don't know how to put it, but who in that European lineup is the new Poulter?
Really?
Who's the lightning rod? Who's the guy who's going to pick the European team up and also get under the skin of the Americans? I don't know. Is it a Tyrell Hatton? Is he the guy to grab that sort of?
Justin Rose, Ryder Cup record, 13 wins, 8 losses, 2 halves. He's 50% in 4-ball and singles. And as I said, 7-2-1 an alt shot. So he's probably their leading man.
Yeah, but his personality is not
a lot of people don't like him.
Yeah.
Very punchable place.
Yeah. He's just not like Poulter's sort of a one of a kind. But
he is a one of a kind. You're right.
He needs someone like that.
Yeah, look, they've had protagonists in the past, right? Both teams have, to be fair. But I think maybe the European stars are a little more you go back to Ballesteros, you think about Monty, Poulter obviously and Garcia have long been guys that, for one reason or several, have, as you said, got underneath the skin of the Americans, and that's earned them 1 or 2 points over the course of the week, just merely by that personality clash. There's less and less of that nowadays, because they all live around the same neighbourhood in Florida for the most part, regardless of what uniform they're wearing this week. So maybe there's a little bit less of that. The crowd factor was always, and it's a bit like Black Caps playing Australia. There's always a story coming out that week. Oh, your fans always kind of putting a little banter in here, and your fans, you think our fans are bad, your fans are this, that, now. There's always that story during the week of the Ryder Cup that the 13th man effectively is the crowd, and so I think that's going to be no different this week. I just don't see a name on there that's overly disliked. If you're one of the 12 Americans, there's a couple there that maybe aren't quite as known as well at this stage of the game, but you never know when they throw on this Ryder Cup uniform. Maybe Bobby Mack's great grandfather starts coming out in him, and all of a sudden he turns into the lightning rod that these matches tend to produce.
He could swear the Americans wouldn't understand what he was saying.
Exactly. Good point.
I could see,
and you can.
Yeah. John Rahm and Rory McIlroy stand out as the two that need to. They play quite emotionally, and they need to, I guess, harness that emotion and push it on the Europeans. If Rory McIlroy is bouncing down the fairway and pumping the crowd up like we've seen in the past, I think that'll get the crowd into it, as you say, Phil, but also wind a few Americans up. And the other person, I think, Shane Lowry, he the Ryder Cup was dead and buried at Whistling Straits, and he was still trying to pump people up and get under people's skins at the last one. So he could be another one too. And then you look at the US team, you got, JT's going to do his thing. Him and Spieth will be high-fiving and yahooing all over the place. But I think it goes back to what we said earlier, like the teams are just too likable now. There's no more biff. We need to bring back biff.
Well, yeah, we'll see this weekend.
We will. Right, move on. Current form versus course form. Does it matter? No USA player has played at Marco Simone. As I said, Højgaard, Bobby Mack have won there. A lot of the European team has played there. When I look at wins this year, Europe has more wins on the board, or the European team has more wins on the board, 13-10. And I know you'll like this, Paul. You can make an argument to say 17-10 if you count Ludwig's 4 amateur wins before turning professional. So does it matter? Course form, current form, any form, or is it just be there in the week and perform?
The antagonist in me would say that form doesn't much matter. I think, the 72 holes of stroke play, converting that into 18 holes of match play on a venue that, although you say that, Bobby Mack and Højgaard have had some success there, they've also left off a guy that had the most recent success around that golf course in Morocco. And so that was a surprise. I think experience in the Ryder Cup counts for more than form in stroke play events, and we may well be stepping all over ourselves given what we've said over the last half an hour to this point. But I just don't feel like the wins across the board on either tour count for as much as experience in the Ryder Cups and experience in major championships. And so although Clark and Harmon, as we said, were rookies, getting it done in a major championship counts for way more than winning the, Qatar Open a couple of years ago.
Anything to add there, Paul?
Yeah, what Phil said. Yeah.
All right, quick one before
ask Eddie Jones what he thinks about experience and form.
We'll have to get you back for the rugby podcast later this week. Quick one before we move on. What's it going to take for Europe to win, and what's it going to take for USA to win, Phil?
14.5 points, apparently, they say. But hey, look, I've got the sneaky suspicion, and you're rolling out, what are we, $1.65 for the Yanks and $2.35, I think, for the Europeans. And Paul, you were talking about a couple of the recent Ryder Cups that have been blowouts, that have been decided prior to the last match. And don't tell me where it comes from. I got there's no science in these bones, but I've got this sneaky suspicion that this one might go down to the wire, and so therefore, what's a tie paying in the Ryder Cup?
Tie $11.
Just saw a tie in the Solheim Cup.
Yeah,
We did.
exactly.
And that was after the Europeans, were they down 4-0 after the first morning session?
Wow.
4-0 down.
And so I see that too, and well weighed in that with form, there's a couple of major championships in the Europeans. Of course, Ram was impressive at Augusta earlier this year. I take in that you've got a venue that neither team is super familiar with. A lot of the European tour players even played there over the last couple of seasons. Both teams have had a scouting report, but it feels like to me that there's, with all of the factors that you throw into this, it feels like this is going to be a really even contest. I just feel like we may well go down to the last 3 or 4 matches in the singles on the Sunday before you're going to get it done. One thing for me that I'm hoping to see, shall we put it this way, hoping to see, is that McIlroy puts this team on his shoulders. It may not be enough to get it done, but he actually puts the team on his shoulders. He's talked about doing that, but hasn't necessarily been that star in the matches. And in Western Straits, it was all too much for him. The result was what it was, but I would like to see him be the new Ballesteros, be the new Faldo, be the new Sandy Lyle, Ian Woosnam, be the new guy that actually puts his team on his shoulders and carries them to victory.
Well, he loves the Ryder Cup, even though when he was younger, he made a few comments about it being an exhibition or a type tournament. He was in tears after Whistling Straits when they talked to him. So he'll be up for this one. Whether he can get it done, I don't know. But
his Ryder Cup record, 12-12-4.
Yep.
He is 4 for 4 when going out first in foursomes or four balls. So get him out early
with the young fella.
Career singles, this would be all match play. Singles record 40 wins, 19 losses, 4 halves. So he is your guy that you need to be on his back, and he needs to be charging. Found one for the punt, as you said, $11 for the tie. If you go to the correct score market, 14-all, you get $13 for that one.
Hold on a minute. So the tie is $11, but the 14-all tie is $13. You worked that one out for me, Phil. What have we done here?
Get into it before the bookies do it, folks.
Yes.
I want the $13 one. Put it that way.
Paul, what do you think? How do Europe, or how do either team win this? Where does it lie?
For Europe to win, two of those three big boys have to fire.
Yeah.
So 2 out of McIlroy, Hovland, and Rahm, for mine, 2 of those three boys have to absolutely be on fire for Europe to have any chance. For the Americans, they've just look. Most of these guys haven't played the Ryder Cup in Europe, so they really don't have any scar tissue in terms of we've been there so many times and we've never got the job done. So I think that's an advantage for them. They just got to think back to Whistling Straits and just get down and do what they did there. I know it's easier to say it than to actually do it, but that's got to be their mindset, I think. Where it's very similar to the team that they had at Whistling Straits. So they've got really, really good memories from there. Most of them have never lost in Europe because they've never played in Europe in a Ryder Cup. Yeah, well, I think that's an advantage for them.
I think for the US, it comes down to JT. He's been a controversial pick, you could say. If he plays well, they play well. He's their captain, their leader. They'll all be sort of looking at him. Scotty Scheffler needs to putt well. I tell you what, I would love to see him standing over a 3-footer and putting it sort of 4 or 5 foot past for his mate to come back and have to save a par. It would be wild. And for the Europeans, a bit like what you've said, I think the big dogs in Hovland, Rahm, Rory, and I'll put Fleetwood in there too. I think 3 of those guys need to have winning records for the weekend for Europe to have a chance. Right. We'll move on. We were going to play a little game, but I realise we've kept Phil for a long time.
We've passed the 19th. We're playing extra holes here.
Well, only imagine that. That'd be cool.
Cool. There, the tie comes into it again, doesn't it?
Imagine that, and I guess there's some Ryder Cup nuffies out there that they have the envelope rule, right? So if someone goes down and there's a player in the envelope of the other team that they, rather than actually have default, they actually have yank somebody that match that just goes down as a tie if there's a genuine injury. Imagine if there was a player in the envelope that if the matches were tied, 2 players in the envelope, you guys, you didn't play today, you didn't play each other today, but you guys are going to go and decide the Ryder Cup. Now that would be some conclusion. That would be awesome.
That's like a penalty shootout in football. I mean, the guy who wins, fantastic. He's a hero for a whole continent. The other guy, he's like, he will never play golf again.
Made for TV spectacle. Love it. Right. We'll wrap things up. We'll get to some betting. We've each got $100 of hypothetical money to bet with. Paul, I'll start with you first. Where are you going with your $100 this week on the Ryder Cup?
Well, I was going to put 20 on the tie at 11, but I've decided to put 20 on the 14 all tie at $13. I've just changed my mind. So yeah, I've got 20 on that. Look, I've just Bobby Mack at the price to be the top European rookie at $5. I'm going to put 30 on Bobby Mack at $5. So I've got $50 left, and I'm going to have top point scorer for the Europeans and top point scorer for the Americans. For the Europeans, I think. Look, I think John Rahm, who, if you look back to Whistling Straits, he was one of the few Europeans who really did stand up, and I think he's built for this type of golf. So I really like the look of John Rahm. He is the favourite to be the Europeans' top point scorer. He's at $5.25. I'm happy to put $30 on John Rahm at $5.25. And for the Americans, I do like one of the Kelly boys. I'm just tossing up. I'm going to go with Morikawa. I just think his demeanour suits this sort of play as well. So Morikawa to be the top US point scorer. Me last 20 on him at $10.
Nice.
But
Should
yeah,
have- should have-
14 all. 14. I'm writing that
14
down
all.
now. 14 all.
Phil, where are you going with your $100 of hypothetical cash?
Yeah, you bring up a really good point with Justin Thomas. So, a curious pick that was on the kind of tips of everybody's tongue there for a while. I guess the experience was no surprise, but we've seen the team play turn people's careers around in both the President's Cup and in the Ryder Cup, and in fact in the Solheim Cup as well. And so I've got Thomas to do something special this week. It will certainly be a run against form, and it's certainly not a shout out that says that form coming in is an indicator. But I get the sense that there's a lot on his shoulders and that a lot of trust has been placed in him. So I sense that he hasn't played as quite as much golf either as the other guys, not being in the playoffs, missing a few cuts this year. But he's been tooling that game of his and sense that he's going to play if he's in form, and if the golf course sets up for him. I sense that he's going to play a lot of matches, and so could well be that surprise factor. But like Adam Scott, when Sharky put the trust in him at the President's Cup there a few years ago, just enough to turn his career around, it could be a pivotal moment. So I think he's going to, may well have one of those weeks where he is unbeatable. We'll see, but I sense that we're going to go there. I've already declared it. I've got to follow through. I can't say that I'm on the draw and then not get on the draw, or the tie. And so hey, why not? I think only 2 or 3. You guys are the historians here. 2 or 3 tied matches in the recent era. And so it's a rarity.
89 and 89. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a rarity. And so I think that there's this high likelihood that might be the case. And I'm with you. I think that Rahm may well be the leading point scorer for the European side. As much as I'd love to see McIlroy, be in the thick of the moments because of the style of golf that he plays, the emotion that he brings, that he's now the captain of this side, with Westwood and Garcia and Poulter and co not there. I do sense that Rahm will be channeling his inner Ballesteros, his inner Jose Maria, and bring some of that continental European fire to lead the European side as the leading point scorer in the European team.
Very nice. Well, I'll be the only one that goes out on a limb and picks a winner then.
Go on.
I'm going to go $50 on Europe to win the trophy back at $2.10. I've got 20 on Ludwig to be the Europeans' top rookie. It was $2.88. It's now $2.15. And then I've got 10 each on Max Homa, top US point scorer. I think that President's Cup last year went 4-0. He was one of their best. He had a very good Walker Cup record coming through before he turned professional. Loves match play. I think he will be well suited here. I've got Victor Hovland. So Max top US point scorer at $10. $10 on that. $10 on Victor Hovland, top European point scorer. Just playing too good. Is in another world at the moment when it comes to golf. Probably the best player on the planet in the last 3 months, maybe. Mm-hmm. I could check stats. I'm not going to right now. And last one, I'm with you, Phil. I've got JT. I've got $10 on JT to be USA's top wildcard point scorer at $5.20. I think that is a great price. He's going to play 3 or 4 matches with his mates, Spieth and Fowler. He has to play singles. He loves match play. This is JT. This is his vibe. And that's my $100.
Boom.
Boom. Remember, folks, if you are having a punt, please do so responsibly. There are plenty of markets available right now at tab.co.nz and the app, with a lot more coming, I'm told. There'll be boosts, there'll be power plays, there'll be all sorts.
Plenty.
So check back in the lead up to the Ryder Cup later this week.
Phil, can I ask Phil a question?
You can, yeah. Sure.
A normal week, obviously you shifting house and all that, so this is not a normal sort of week. A normal week, yeah. How often would you play golf now, these days?
Right now, yeah. It all depends on what week you catch me on, to be fair. There's most weeks I don't play, actually. Maybe once a month or so now. Every now and then I have a couple of commitments to play, but don't play anywhere near as much as I used to, or anywhere near as much as I'd like to. Actually, I'd like to play a bit more, but just don't make the time for it. And so and I must admit, I'm a fair weather golfer. So when you have a look at the rainfall around New Zealand the last 6 months or so, there's been no real cause or need to play golf in the rain. So with a bit of luck, the summer might bring a few more 25-degree sunny summer days, and we'll get out a little bit more over the summer months.
Well, we're supposed to have a nice long dry summer, aren't we? So there should be plenty of opportunity. Karl, you've got a tournament in November. You might want to flick an invitation to Phil while he's here.
Yeah, sure.
Little raise funds for Movember.
Little tournament that I run annually here in Wellington for Movember. Little nine-hole Ambrose job. It's good fun.
Finally, I found a partner.
Now, I've found my format with Ambrose. I had definitely found my format with Ambrose. Foursomes, I don't want anyone relying on me making a 6-foot putt nowadays. But Ambrose, you know what? When you got 3 other guys that can carry the can, I always like to putt last, and so that sounds like a format for me.
Phil, thank you very much for joining us on the cut line today for this special one-off Ryder Cup episode. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate your time in amongst the move.
Yeah, no worries at all. Really enjoyed it. And look, I don't watch a lot of golf on TV nowadays either. There's the 4 big ones, a couple of other events maybe, and then the Ryder Cup. So so very much looking forward to it. All sorts of different storylines, and going to be a pretty exciting week, I think. Hopefully there's now, unfortunately, when it's in Europe, the time zone doesn't necessarily fit for us here in New Zealand. But there probably will be a late night on Sunday night and an early morning Monday morning, trying to keep an eye on it. 7 p.m. payoff, I think.
It's
Friday night.
Yeah, if we're going to watch the whole thing, then something else is going to miss out this weekend. West Coast, United States, perfect for us time zone wise. Europe, yeah, it's always getting a bit dicey.
Yeah,
but I'll be up anyway.
Don't want to distract everyone and look all of a sudden 2 years ahead, but the next Ryder Cup is in New York City at Bethpage Black. So if the fan interaction at this Ryder Cup's not enough for you, get ready for 2 years' time. And in New York, when it was telegraphed that Phil Mickelson was going to be the US captain, I don't think that's going to be the case now. And so New York City, a venue that Tiger won the US Open at in 2002. Who do you think is going to be the captain in 2 years' time for the US team? Well, we'll see, but it's fair to say it's probably not going to be Mickelson.
Baba Booey!
Right,
let's do it.
We'll leave it there.
Yes.
Thank you all for listening, and I don't know when we'll be back, but hopefully we'll be back. Enjoy the punting, enjoy the golf, and we will see you next time on the Cut Line.